Three scary hitchhiking horror stories. The first and only hitchhiker I'll ever pick up. So last Friday, I, a 25-year-old female, had a little bit of free time before picking up my kids from school. It was a gorgeous day, so I decided to spend some time cruising some back roads in my hometown, listening to some music. Passed this guy with his thumb out trying to catch a ride, and almost picked this guy up. He looks to be about late 30s to early 40s, carrying a fishing pole and a backpack. Pretty innocent looking, I guess. But see, I'm a lone female. I've been taught with hundreds of hitchhiker gone wrong stories that you just keep driving. So I kept driving, and as I'm driving, I'm having this internal dialogue of guilt about my decision not to pick this guy up. You know, if I was hitchhiking, I'd really hope that someone would pick me up. And I really mean, what's the worst that could happen? That mixed with my new self-improvement goal of doing the things that scare me as often as possible. This led me to the conclusion that if when I looked back around and he was still walking, I would pick him up. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, he was still there. I was feeling a little nervous, pulling over, getting him. What was I gonna do? Peel out while he was trying to get in my vehicle? As soon as he gets in, I realized I have probably made a horrible mistake. Because he seemed like he was on some type of drugs, and he just didn't smell very nice. Because this dude was also looking at me like I was a feast and he was starved. I didn't realize exactly how rattled I was in my decision until he asked me for some cigarettes. And my hands were shaking so bad I barely pulled one out of my cigarette pack. Driving made it easier to hide my nerves, but I was internally freaking out and trying to decide how I would beat this guy if he tried to do anything with me. His name was Wayne. He lives about 5 minutes from where I picked him up. Meanwhile, he's telling me how he lost his license due to DUIs, how he's living in his house with an old man, and he tried to get him to come with him, but he didn't want to come. He was also trying to talk me into hanging out at the said house that he was living in with the old man and come over and drink with him the next day. When I finally get him to his destination, it's just a little shack surrounded by all these junk cars and random stuff. He gets out and is trying to still get me to come inside with him. I tell him no, and I leave. I'm feeling really relieved and a little happy that I faced the fear of mine. Fast forward to Monday, my instructor says, "Oh no, apparently someone got murdered down so-and-so road. Do you know anyone that way?" I say, "Wow, you know that's really ironic. I took a hitchhiker down that road Friday. His name was Wayne, I think." Probably wasn't 15 minutes later when I see old Wayne's pictures on Facebook saying the police suspect him of for stabbing someone to death. And it was at the very house I dropped him off at Friday. Graphic information of how he stabbed him in the lungs, the victim bled out in that little shack. And the old man he was living with doesn't even exist. I promised myself I'm never picking up another hitchhiker in my life. I was 18 at the time, driving to get some food on my lunch break. I saw a man, probably in his 50s, trying to hitch a ride. I was pretty hesitant to stop, so I drove by. I felt guilty though, remembering my mom always stopping to help people stranded on the road, homeless, out of gas, and etc. So I turned around and offered a ride. He introduced himself with a name that I cannot remember and thanked me profusely. He apparently had groceries and told me he didn't want his meat to spoil in the hot New Mexico weather. He asked to be dropped off at a post office which was not too far away. As I drove off, he stared at me for a good minute and the sirens went off in my head. Awkward, creepy, and unsettling were the feelings that I was receiving. After a bit, he blurted out, "You sure are pretty," and asked me for a number. I said no, I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in the least bit. He kept asking and insisting my relationship status was irrelevant. I asked him to stop and he became very aggressive. I veered into the closest turn, slammed on my brakes, and yelled, "Is it too much to ask for a little bit of respect now and then? Get out of my car." He gave me a blank look and just got out, much to my surprise. He ended up forgetting his groceries
And what scared me the most is the fact that there was no meat, just some eggplants and other stuff that wouldn't spoil very quickly even in New Mexico weather. Now that I'm older and hopefully smarter, I'll think about who I pick up a little more, and it also helps having an 80-pound dog.
I'm an older woman, and back when I was young, things were different. You could hitchhike from guys in vans, but it was also a time when serial killers roamed free. I grew up on a farm in South Carolina. No paved roads and no lot of communication from the outside world. Some people might not like that type of life, but I liked it. It was very calm. It was just overall nice to be around nature. My best friend and I decided to walk to the only store/post office/gas station for some candy. Highly unusual because we never had any money. As we were walking, this car came driving by really slow. We didn't think anything about it because the roads were not the best. We were not the most experienced kids in terms of the outside world, and no one ever told us about stranger danger. We knew everyone and talked to anyone who said hi. Well, this car passed and we see it turn around. Didn't think much about it, but then it came to us and stopped. I might not have known what danger from a stranger was, but I had this horrible nauseous feeling when I looked in the car. Like you've seen an animal predator and don't know what you should do. All I know is I had the feeling of, let's run. My friend must have not gotten that feeling, she went right up to the car. The man was greasy and a little bit dirty, but we're used to seeing people like that out working, since it's normal when you work to become sweatier and just dirtier from the type of rough work that was done in farmland. He asked us if we wanted a ride. She said sure, and I said no, we need to walk. She looked so mad at me, like I had ruined her day. So she said she was going to walk with me. I could see his hand move like he was going to open the door, and I had a feeling of dread. Everything started to go in slow motion, so I just grabbed my friend's arm and pulled her back. Just then, another car was coming from the opposite way, and he drove off. She was so mad at me for hurting her arm, and I did leave her a couple of bruises. But I was still happy that I got her away from what I thought was the danger. A few years later, she came over and looked like she was going to pass out. She had a newspaper in her hand and couldn't say anything, so I looked at it. The same man who tried to get us in his car. His name was Pee Wee Gaskins. I was so relieved that I got away from that danger, because we could have been one of his victims. To give some context, Donald Henry Pee Wee Gaskins Jr. was an American serial killer and rapist from South Carolina who stabbed, shot, drowned, and poisoned more than 1,000 people. Before his convictions for murder, Gaskins had a long history of criminal activities, resulting in prison sentences for assault, burglary, and statutory rape. His last arrest was for contributing to the delinquency of a minor, 13-year-old Kim Gelkins, who had gone missing in September 1975. During their search for the missing girl, police discovered 8 bodies buried in shallow graves near Gaskins' home in Prospect, South Carolina. It was confirmed that he had 15 victims, while he claimed to have 110, and the span of his crimes took place from 1953 to 1982, before subsequently getting executed by electrocution on September 6, 1991, while he was 58 years old, at the Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. Thank you for watching the video, and if you have any stories of your own, you can send them in the email in the description or in the comments.